Hello, welcome to this video. That was a bit shouty, wasn't it? Never mind. How are you doing? Good to see you. Today we're going to be rustling up a beer, an extract beer, a dry malt extract beer. Very important. We're using dry malt extract, and I'm going to show you the bits and pieces that I'm going to throw into this dry malt extract beer first, and then we'll just get on with it. Alright, see you at the end. So here we are then, boys and girls. Make sure you've got your recipe. Very important that. If you ain't got your recipe, you're not going to get very far. This is a sachet of beer yeast, US West Coast beer yeast. I found this in a kit that I haven't actually made yet, so I'm going to use that because it's good yeast is that. We've got 1.5 kilos of dry malt extract. There's a half left over from the last brew. Here we've got some crystal rye malt. I'm going to be steeping about 150 grams of that at 65 to 70 C for about 30 minutes in about 2 litres of water, so we get the goodness out of that. We've got some Chinook, that's going to be our bittering hop. Got Amarillo, Mosaic and Citra, and those three we're going to chuck in equal amounts during the course of the boil. Yeah, it should be good, hopefully. So let's get on with it. So here we are in the kitchen. You'll have to forgive all the dirty desktops and worktops and all of that. Don't worry about that. It's all good. This, as you're probably saying to yourself, what the hell is that? This is a hop sock or a grain bag. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure out our grain. Now, because we only need about 150 grams of it, I've just put a hop sock or a grain bag into a pint glass, stuck it on top of there, make sure it's down at 0, and what we do is we just tip in the grains until we get to 150. This is a nice easy way to do it, boys and girls. Nice and easy this, and you don't get any mess. So a little bit more. A little bit more. Hey! We'll get there in a minute. There we go. 150 grams. Perfect. 151. Damn it, Janet. That's alright. So what I'll do is I'll tie this up and we'll put it in a pot. So here's our pot. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure out 2 litres. How do we know we're going to have 2 litres of water, Roy? Exactly. Because what you do is you go by that measurement down there. Although it says grams, obviously we don't want grams, we want litres. Just convert it to litres instead. I'm going to be using bottled water this time around, so we just chuck in bottled water. There's going to be 2 litres of that, so that needs to be 2,000, boys and girls. Alright, so you just chuck water in until it says 2,000, there's 1 litre. Keep going. Well, there's your 2 litres, just over 2 litres. That's exactly what we need. The other way I know it's 2 litres is, look, we've got a 2 litre bottle. Ha ha! That's cheating, Roy. The other supermarkets are available, folks. And now it's the most obvious step. We need to put the water on the boil, but we don't want it to boil completely. We need the temperature to get up till about 65 C, 65 to 70 is fine, and then we stop it, and then we put our grains in. Here we are then. Here we are, boys and girls. I don't know if you can see on that thermometer there, it's nearly 65, 64.5, 64.7. So once they hit 65, which is around about now, what we can do is we'll take that out. Take the pot off the stove while it's burning. Make sure not to burn your hands. Here we are then. It's around about 65 degrees now. So we just put in our grains. Just put it in nice and loose. Let all the grain goodness come out. Like that. Put the lid on and let it sit for about 30 minutes. So let's create a new timer on here. 30 minutes. And we'll come back in a bit. Okay, now you're probably wondering what all this mess is. These are all the hops. So while we're waiting for the grain to steep for 30 minutes, now's a good time to measure out all your hops, okay? I use these Chinese takeaway tubs. They're really handy just to put bits and bobs in. You can use whatever you like. Again, always have your recipes nearby so you know exactly how much you're going to be putting in and when you're going to be doing it. So the first thing I need to do is get 12 grams of Chinook ready. So I'll get 12 grams of Chinook, 4 grams of Amarillo, 4 grams of Mosaic, 4 grams of Citra, and then 4 grams again, 4 grams, 4 grams, 4 grams. But you'll see all that when I do the steeping. I'm just going to get it all ready in a pot so I don't have to muck around later on. 12 grams. 12 grams of Chinook. That's our first addition. That's going to be used for our bittering mainly. Yeah, and that will be the first addition. We'll chuck that in. So let's measure out the rest. Here we are then. Here's our addition of Amarillo, Mosaic and Citra. 4 grams of each, making 12 grams. So that will be our second addition, obviously after we put the Chinook in. We need to do another one of those. So I'll do that in a minute. And there's our next lot. As again, we've got 12 grams there. Obviously I'm not showing you the same one twice. You can probably see, compare the video clips, you'll see this is the second lot I've done. Here we are then, boys and girls. There's all of our additions. This last one here is going to go in right at the very end. So I've kept that separately. That's going to just steep really in the finished product while it cools down. That's going to be sort of, you know, the last minute addition while the wort cools. Oh, noisy, noisy, noisy. It's always going to be noisy in the kitchen when you're working on a brew. This is 5 litres of water ready for the boil. Obviously what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding in another 2 litres from this. Yeah, so remember that was 2 litres of water as well. So 2 litres added to this, 5 litres will be 7 litres. That's going to be our bowl size for this small batch. So we're pretty much done, boys and girls, with this steeping of the grain. So what I'm going to do is take this out, just let it seep through for a minute. You could sparge this, in other words you could run a couple of litres of 65 to 70 degrees water through it, but we're only doing a small batch, so I'm not too concerned about that. There'll be enough, there we go, there'll be enough goodness in there to make this beer taste of something rye-y, for want of a better phrase. So this now needs to go in here, ready for our boil. What I've done here, boys and girls, you can't see it on the scales now, but I've got exactly 675 grams of dry malt extract. That's going to be going into our boil. Once it's sort of bubbled up a little bit, we'll throw that in. So here we are then, boys and girls. It's near to the point where it's going to boil, so we'll start chucking in our malt extract. 675 grams there. Just chuck it all in. Right, make sure you get most of it out. What you want to do, get yourself a metal spoon like this, give it a stir, make sure that all your malt extract is unclumped, otherwise it will stick to the bottom of the pan and it will burn the pan and you'll get some burnt flavours. And we don't want that, so just make sure that it dissolves alright, you ain't got any clumps there. That seems alright to me. Nice little way to put your spoon on the side of the pan there. Wait till that comes to the boil and then we'll put in our first edition. And I'm not talking about the band first edition from the 1980s. I'm talking about our hops. Obscure reference there, folks. Now the other thing you can do, of course, is make sure you sanitise your bucket ready for putting your beer in. So you can do that at any time, of course. I use VWP or any other sort of Milton tablet, stuff like that, but you can obviously use whatever way of sanitising you choose to do so. It's up to you. So I'm going to leave that there, and then that'll be nice and sanitised later on. Obviously I've got my paddle in there as well. I'm going to be using that to stir the beer later, so that needs to be sanitised. So anything you're going to use at any point, make sure it's in there. I've got an airlock in there somewhere as well. It's see-through, so you probably can't see it. So make sure that's ready for later on. Here we are then, boys and girls. We've got a big boil over. Well, not massive boil over. Just turn the heat down a little bit, just so that it's bubbling over a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my first edition of hops, which are these ones, as you know, the Chinook. This is Brewing the Royal way. Just chuck those in. Plonky plonky plonk. There we go. Make sure they get in to the brew nicely. Keep your eye on your pot. Make sure it doesn't boil over, folks. Alright. Tip 3744. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set a timer for 15 minutes, because we're going to do a 45-minute boil on this. And after the first 15 minutes we're going to add our next addition of hops. So here we are then, we're approaching the end of this first boil. There we go. Shut up, stop. Let's reset that for the next one. So let's chuck in our next batch of hops. Here they are, lovely little hoppies. They go in there like that. And we'll walk back over here and start our timer for another 15 minutes. Bump. Here we are then, boys and girls, for the last edition. Well, the last edition for the boil in any case. There we go. I'm going to do that for about 10 minutes this time, because we need to add in all the additional sugars. Remember, we haven't done that yet. So let's do that for 10 minutes and we'll come back in 10 minutes. Nice one. So we're coming towards the end now of the 10-minute boil, and we're going to put this in. This is a well-flock tablet, or proto-flock tablet. What that does is it clarifies the beer, makes it nice and clean. Hopefully it makes it nice and clean. We're going to bung that in first. Bung that in, plonky plonky plonky. And then what we're going to do is, I've got 500 grams of sugar here, and I'm going to chuck that in. Plonky plonky plonky. Chuck that in. And lastly, we need to chuck in the rest of the DME, and that's about 825 grams of DME there. So that all goes in, folks. Alright, and then we set the timer for about 10 minutes. Maybe 5, just to make sure that we get the dregs of the DME, and it's all into the boil with all the rest of the stuff. I don't think I'm going to get much more out of there, am I? Let's have a look. No, it's not too bad. Make sure you give it a stir with your spoon, because remember, the DME is going to sink to the bottom of the pan, and you don't want it to burn your pan. Okay, give it a nice stir so that it dissolves, and then hopefully it'll be alright. Set your timer. I would say 5 minutes will do the job, and then I think we're pretty much done. So here we are at the end, folks. Here's another batch of hops. These are going to go in right at the end, obviously. Just going to cover those up, take it off of the boil, and then leave it to sit for a while, just to let those last hop additions, you know, sit in the brew, and I think then we're pretty much done. I know I said that before, but I lied. So here we are then, boys and girls. Here is our wort It's finished boiling, of course. I've stuck it in a sink here. It's cold water in there. The thing is, it won't stay cold for long, so what I have to keep doing is doing this. Let the cold water come out, and then fill the sink up again with cold water. Just enough to cool down the wort for a while. And then once that's cool enough for me to touch that, which it isn't at the moment, I can pour the wort into the fermenter. Here we are. This is it. We've poured it into the fermenting vessel. These are all the leftover hops, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the rest of the cold water over the hops into the bucket, just to get off the dregs. And then what we'll do is we'll stick the bucket into our temperature controlled beer fridge. Wait until the temperature is around about 21 degrees and then we'll pitch the yeast. Here we are, boys and girls, about 5 minutes later. As you can see, it's 25.3 degrees. So that beer in there is not really down to the temperature where we need it to be yet to pitch the yeast. But because this is a beer fridge, what it'll do is it'll bring the temperature down. Gradually that'll get around to about 21 degrees, and then we can start thinking about rehydrating our yeast and pitching it. That's it then. We're at the end, folks. What I haven't done on camera is recorded me putting in the yeast, because you know that's boring. You can put in yeast yourself, you know how to put yeast in. And finally the dry hops. All I did was measure out the hops again. You've seen me measure hops out, put them into a hop bag, chuck them into the brew after about 7 days. 7 days later we'll come back, bottle it, see how it's turned out. That's all for me. See you on the next one. Ta-da!